Good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. We're here to talk about accounting and recurring transactions. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Before we get started on our topic at hand, a few technical things. Click the little red arrow on the sidebar of your webinar control panel. That allows you to minimize that, get the full visual effect of the presentation. This is particularly important if you're using a single monitor, or if you've got a dual monitor setup or multi-monitor setup, just drag that off to your second desktop, get it out of the way. Welcome to everyone. We're here till about 20 minutes after 12 noon Eastern time. I'm going to wrap things up pretty promptly right around 12:20, wherever I am. Happy to stick around and answer questions if you have them. If you have questions, please type those into the webinar control panel, the questions portion of that. I'll try my best to keep an eye on those and see what I can't do to get to answer those, but if I don't get to them during the event, I'll certainly be happy to try my best to answer those at the very end. Please keep the questions on topic, meaning about our topic of recurring transactions. We've allocated this time, for everybody to participate in talking about recurring transactions, not about other things. There may be another webinar that's more suited to your questions or to answer those. Or, of course, you can contact our support staff, and we're happy to answer those there as well. Our topic today is taken from our A202 accounting workbook, pages 8 to 14. So if you have the A202 workbook, please turn to page 8, and that's the topic. That's the printed material that I'm using for the webinar today. You can purchase the workbooks from the workbook page on our website if you don't have those. And we are recording today's event, of course. So the video recording, albeit I think we have one out there from a couple years ago on recurring transactions, hasn't changed much, honestly, folks, in the past several versions. So the same video that's out there, we'll replace it with this one, but it's the same topic, pretty much everything's exactly the same. So, all right, let's go ahead and dive in. So on page 8, we talk about recurring transactions. Church Windows provides an option called recurring transactions that are set up and saved, and you can reuse or reselect those as needed anytime, okay? Basically, it means you don't have to re-choose the accounts that are involved in the transaction, okay? So it'll, one, save you time, and it minimizes mistakes. So if you use the same accounts each and every time in certain transactions, whether it's the same vendor or the same expense account or, income account or whatever accounts you're using, it will ensure that you're reselecting those same accounts each and every time because it's a saved entry. It's a framework. It's a structure, essentially. Okay? So recurring transactions occur in several different transactions in accounting. They occur under Enter Income right here at the bottom left, Enter Bills. We have it under Transactions and Transfer right up here at the very top, and under Other, journal entry transactions. Those are the 4 transactions where we can set up recurring transactions. You can set up all of your recurring transactions at one time if you wish, or you can set them up on an as-need basis. You may always add and set up recurring transactions anytime you want. Okay, there's no requirement or restriction as to when that can occur. Okay. Finally, on the full bullet points there on page 8, recurring transactions are not automated. They don't automatically pop up when used. Again, they're just there for you to select as needed and to bring into the screen to post and make desired changes if you need to. They're just there to use. So when we go into recurring transactions, so it talks about going into Enter Bills. I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to go up to Journal Entry, and I'm going to enter a recurring journal entry transaction. But, folks, it's the same function no matter where you go, okay? Only difference is on bills, there's a vendor or liability selected and either an income or an expense account that you're choosing, income or expenses, as the case may be, okay? But there's always a debit and a credit account, at least a minimum of those on there. So we go up to Other, and we're going to choose Journal Entry Transaction. So right here, it's where we have to choose a date. So we're just going to choose today's date. We're not posting anything. We're just setting up the transaction. So let me get out my highlighter here and kind of show you. Right up here in the upper right, we've got this button called Recurring Transactions. That's where it appears on every one of those transaction screens is in the upper right, right above Show Running Balance. Okay, so we click on that, and we see we've got one in here for recording a journal entry for our prepaid pledges. But we want to now set up a recurring transaction that we're going to post with a regularity of our choosing, that is to record our changes to our investments or our investment earnings on a quarterly basis. So right here, we notice in the upper left-hand corner, we've got several buttons up here: Create New, Edit Selected, Delete Selected. And so basically, that's where your controls are with regards to establishing or working with those recurring entries. So we're going to click Create New. It now opens up a window right over the top of this. And first of all, it's going to require that we enter a description. And we're going to call this one Investment Earnings. Frequency, we're going to put in quarterly because that's when we're choosing to record those. Just, it's a friendly reminder, okay? And we can type in comments, transaction comments if we want. I'm going to leave that because I would probably want to customize those anytime, whether it was first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. There's no requirement. You have the little light switch here you can turn off if you don't want to enter the transaction comments if you wish. We're going to leave that on. So right here under our accounts, we're going to type in here, and we're going to find our Lynn Schwab investment asset. So our earnings is going to be a debit. So I don't know what those are. So those change on a per transaction basis or quarterly basis, right? So I don't know what those earnings are, but the recurring journal entry requires that I put at least an amount of some kind in there. So I'm just going to put $1 in there. So then I tab over a couple of times. I'm now going to type in, and I'm going to find my investment earnings, Lynn Schwab investment income account, or I can do gains and losses, whichever I want. I can do multiple accounts if I wish. Okay, so we're just going to do Lynn Schwab investment income. Actually, I'm changing my mind on that. We're going to change it to our gains losses on investments. And that's the credit side. We credit income to put that in or add it in. Now I've got those accounts entered with at least a balance debit and a credit of $1. Now I simply click Save Transaction. It now adds it to my list of recurring journal entry transactions, that I can now use and reselect in future. Okay, so that's how we create. We're on page 9 now about clicking the Creating New Recurring Bill Transaction. So, so we can. That's how easy it is to set these up, folks, okay? So we're going to kind of come back and talk about editing and deleting and how to use them here momentarily. But bottom of page 9 talks about recurring transaction categories, okay? So you can categorize recurring transactions for easy selection and use, okay? So we notice here on the right-hand side of our recurring journal entry transaction window that we've got this column called Category. And we're showing there that it's uncategorized. Well, they're all going to be uncategorized as we're setting them up until we establish or decide we're going to work with those. Okay, so right here, notice I don't have anything down here. So if I click on the Edit Categories, it's going to allow me to create some categories within which I can then group or bundle those recurring transactions together. But I'm not going to do that here. We're going to close out of our journal entry window, and we're going to go back to Enter Bills to do that because we got more. It'll make more sense when we look at it here. Okay, so if we now, again, in the upper right, recurring transactions, we click on that. We now notice here we've got about 6 or 8 different recurring bill transactions. Okay, so I say a common use of something for like a recurring transactions would be like, say, if I was wanting to pay my bills, okay, and I wanted to pay all those simultaneously. So I would click on Edit Categories, and I would click in here, and I'd call this, say, Utilities. Sorry, my Utilities. and we click Add, and notice it adds a recurring transaction category called Utilities. Okay, so I now click OK through that. But now I simply go down through the list, and I just simply choose that particular category name for each one of those grouped together. Okay, we'll go ahead and throw telephone in there or internet in there just to make it interesting. So now then I've put those in there for those 4 particular bills. Okay, so next time when say I'm ready to pay those bills, I would come back in to pay enter bills, choose recurring. I would do, it says select rows by category. So from here, I check utilities down at the menu at the bottom. Hopefully everybody should see that. And then I click OK. I put a check mark there, and notice it now highlights all of those bills. Okay, it's pre-selecting those for me. Okay, so now then I would just go up to Edit or Paste in the upper right corner up here, and that'll paste those over into my unposted bills batch. Okay, so now I click Paste. It now puts those 4 bills down at the bottom. Now I can, highlight and edit them and move them back up to manipulate if I need to change amounts or dates or what have you. And we're kind of now shifting into our page 10 topic on using a recurring transaction. So you always have to choose at least one recurring transaction and click Paste. And it always then puts it down at the bottom half of the window in our unposted transaction list. So we see down here, unposted bills batch, it says 4. I've got 4 different vendors in here with their amounts and accounts. I don't have to pre-select those, but I do need to make some edits or changes to some of those, okay? So what I do there then is I simply highlight one of them. We'll say that the AT&T bill is good, but we do need to edit our big city utilities. So we're going to say we're paying our water bill. So I can highlight that and click Edit in the bottom left, or I can double-click on it, and it moves it back up to the top. So notice it's now moved it up to the top of my Enter Bills window. I can now change the date on it, and then I can come in here and I can say, okay, my water bill was, $678.90. Okay, and I can put in any comments if I want, and then click on Add to Batch. So I can now do that for any one of these now bills, and then when I'm ready, I can then just do post or post and pay if I'm ready to pay those bills. Okay? And so the same would be true about our recurring journal entry that we had just entered before. So if I close out of that, we're going to save our batch here. We might be back here, so it's saved successfully. Now we're going to go back up to Other and Journal Entry Transaction. So let's say I now have received my quarterly investment statement from my Lynn Schwab Investments. I would go up to Recurring. I would highlight Investments Earning line. I click Paste. I then either highlight it and click Edit. It now moves it back up to the top. I can then edit my, amounts or dates or whatever I want and say, we're going to say we received, $234.56 worth of investment earnings. And I can type in some, comments if I wish, second quarter earnings, whatever I want. I've got full control here. I now clicked on Add to Batch. And I can post that when I'm ready. But again, I've got recurring transactions in those 4 particular transaction screens, and I can categorize them and then select them accordingly. It's a big time saver, folks, and again, it really greatly reduces the mistakes by ensuring that the same accounts are selected each and every time, okay, when you're choosing these transactions. You can always change the accounts during the posting process, of course, okay? You can put them into categories. There's no requirement to put them into categories, but again, it could save you time. So when I go back up to my recurring transactions and journal entries, again, I've got categories. I can create as many categories and put recurring transactions into as many categories as I wish, okay? So a few things about these recurring transactions when we're looking at these, description, again, a free field. that describes what it is, what the transaction is for. If frequency, again, it just helps remind you of how often it's being posted or used, as the case may be. We're going to go ahead and just cancel out of that. We're going to cancel out of our journal entry transaction. And we're going to delete the entire batch, and we're going to go back to enter bills again. Because I want to show in there, we have some other transactions in here that provide more information. So we show, the description, the frequency, last post, which is the date that the transaction was last posted. So we see here that we have 8/6 on some dates, even though they're not last posted yet, but the system sees them still sitting in there. It's assuming I'm going to post those, okay? But basically, it's the last date that you posted the entries, okay? Again, just a helpful field to determine, to help you understand when the transaction was last posted, okay? So, if I post those, it'll put 8/6 on all those transactions here. We'll go ahead and do that, but it'll set that under those recurring transactions. If I were to cancel out of that it would change it back to whatever the last date was, okay? And I did change my water bill to 8/18, so. Okay, to edit a recurring transaction, I was working with somebody on this earlier this week, a similar function. You can always edit them. So if you highlight a particular transaction and you click the Edit Selected button in the upper left, it opens it up and it allows you to change anything about this. I can change the frequency, the comments, the vendor payee in this case, any of the expense accounts, anything I want, the amounts. And then when I click Save Transaction, it just saves my changes with whatever changes I've made, with whatever that is. Accounts, amounts, date, comments, anything I've entered, frequency, it just saves that. So you don't have to delete a recurring transaction if all you're wanting to do is to be able to make changes or change accounts on it, okay? Or amounts. You can just use the edit, okay? We're going to cancel out of that. And, of course, finally, if you're wanting to delete a recurring transaction, you can simply come in here, you can highlight it, and when we click on highlight it, we can click the delete button right up here at the very top. Let me, again, steer some focus here. Of our 3 buttons, it's the one right here on the right, delete selected. It'll even warn us, folks, when it detects that it's been associated with some transactions. So if I now try to delete that water bill, it should pop up and say the following recurring transactions has been used to create transactions in the past water bill. Are you sure you want to delete delete them? So it gives you the option to say yes or no, but it does tell you that it's been used, and it's questioning if you're sure you're wanting to do that. Because again, maybe edit is preferable to deleting. Certainly, of course, in this case, if maybe it was no longer, an account I needed or a vendor that I was doing business with or anything else like that, something like that, that might be a reason why I might delete that. But it's just basically telling you, you may want to think about deleting the transactions, the recurring transaction before you post it. Of course, if you do delete it, folks, you can always just re-add it back to the recurring transaction. So if you make a mistake, you can always just re-add it back. So if I say yes to that, it'll just say, it'll delete it, and that water bill, that recurring transaction is now gone. So that is, with about 30 seconds left here, folks, that is our topic for the day.